Hey, I'm Bill Beretta, and you're watching a podcast where nostalgia comes alive. It's Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show. Roll it!
Welcome to Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show, the podcast where nostalgia comes alive. Since July of 2021, Jake and his friends have interviewed professionals in the worlds of acting, directing, writing, puppeteering, and many more. Who will they be chatting with in this week's interview? Find out in this Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show episode.
Hello everyone, welcome to this episode of Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show, where nostalgia comes alive. Have you here with us? Thank you for joining. As always, I'm your host, Jake Deffinbaugh, who today is always our co-hosts, Chris Bixby and Matt Bingel. How you guys doing?
Doing good.
Doing good. Hi, everybody. How are you, Jakey?
I'm doing great, Matt. Thank you for asking.
Good. Who do we have today?
Today's guest we have for today, he's an author, animator, and illustrator. We'll discuss his career, including his own books and everything else from the Muppet projects that he's done that we will touch base on later. And of course, he's a part of the Beretta Brothers podcast with his brother, which is our previous guest,
You know what?
Bill.
Sorry to interrupt you, but somebody's just walked in. Oh, it's
Oh.
Billy. Look, Billy's here. Didn't comb your hair or anything. Hey, guys.
Oh my God.
Oh, that's great.
That's great.
Have you seen him before on our show or not?
I don't think
I
so.
think
You know
so.
where this came from? It's beautifully
No.
made. During one of our shows, look, he's got Pepe on his t-shirt.
Oh, look
nice.
at that.
Oh my
But
gosh.
During one of our shows, we were playing a pre-recorded part, and while we were doing that, I just sketched this Billy Muppet, and so I just showed him once the clip was over, and after that, this really great puppet maker, Jared Butcher, who's in,
Yes, I've seen his
you know
work.
Jared, right?
Yes.
He
Yeah.
Yep.
said, "Do you mind if I make it into a puppet?" And he did, and he just sent it to me. So
Oh,
that's
that's
awesome.
That's wonderful.
That's
beautifully
great.
made. Yeah,
That's
got
great.
the hands and everything.
Look at that.
All right, go sit in your chair and watch.
That's wonderful. Of
Mhm.
course, he's a brother, a previous guest, but we're out to get back to that. Please welcome Gene Beretta. Have you here?
Thank
How are you?
Good. Let me just put this down so it doesn't get all messed up. There we go.
No worries.
All right, I'm back. You've got my full attention.
Yes. How's it going?
Good. Just
Nice.
staying busy with projects and all that stuff. I don't know when you'll show this, but have you talked about the Emmys yet on the show?
No, we haven't actually.
Did you know Billy won an Emmy?
We did,
Mhm.
I do
yes.
know about that.
Mhm.
Yes.
I think we
Amazing.
well,
The Children and Family Emmys. Yes, we talked.
we
about
had
it.
Kevin Clash on recently, and he wanted to congratulate Ryan for winning his Emmy with Elmo.
For
Yeah.
outstanding puppetry
Yeah.
performance. Congratulations,
Yes.
Ryan, by the way.
I was
And congratulations to Bill too, and all the
Yes.
And
folks who
everybody at
won.
Muppets Mayhem.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yay.
when I was watching it, I texted Ryan after they called him his name and all that, and he's from this area, and you guys, if you're in Baltimore area, you kind of know the Philly accent because it's similar to the Baltimore accent. Where my buddy over there joined the auto industry, and
Yep.
and so I was texting him congratulations with the accent, and he was texting back with the accent. It's pretty cool.
Oh, that's great.
But it was just so amazing because
wonderful.
the show had been canceled, the Muppets Mayhem had been canceled, and so Billy was just shocked when they announced the award.
Nice.
That's great. That's great. It's a pleasure to have you here. So, to kick things off, we know who you are, but for those who haven't, could you tell our audience a bit about yourself and what you do?
Sure. Well, my main career, outside of anything I've done with the Muppets or Henson, is writing and illustrating children's books, and I've been doing that. I guess this is my 24th year. Excuse me. And so I've been doing it for a while, and I've done well with it, and had some awards and honors, and have stayed busy the majority of the time, and gotten to speak at some really wonderful places, and do a lot of biographies mainly. That's what I've become known for, is biography. So I get asked to do that a lot. or I actually bring them the subject that I like, and most of the time it gets contracted, so that's a good thing. And so aside from the book career, I've also done some animation for Sesame Street and done some character design for Jim Henson Company with the two shows that unfortunately they didn't get picked up. One was called Tinseltown and one was called The Late Night Buffet. But some of those puppets have gone on to be used in other projects, which is cool because you can see them actually come alive. And I did storyboards from Muppets from Space, and occasionally if I'm visiting the set, if there's an opportunity, I get to do some background character stuff.
Nice.
I even did the funniest thing was we Billy and Kevin were doing Fox and Friends to promote this project that the troops were doing. It was a new system where they could communicate with their families from being overseas. And so we went on. Well, we didn't go on. They were booked to do that. And at the last minute, the person who was going to do, so Billy was doing Elmo's daddy, and Kevin was doing Elmo. And this is before Tyler took over Elmo's daddy. Billy had originated the character, and so this was the earlier days. And the person who was going to do his right hand couldn't show up, so I said, "I'll do it." And I was thinking I knew more about what I was, thinking I had more experience than I actually did. So we sat down and we're doing it, and I couldn't see the monitor because we were all bunched in there below the table. And so I didn't have a great sense of the eye line or whatever was around me. And at the end of it, one of the hosts reaches out to shake Elmo's daddy's hand. And so I reached my hand over and smacked Elmo in the side of the head.
Oh.
And Kevin played with it. He goes, "Oh,
Oh my gosh.
My
yeah,
goodness.
it's really funny.
Oh man.
But yeah, so that was my is that the only time? Yeah, I guess that's the only time I did a right hand. And the last time. I wonder why that came to be.
Nice. So, what was your childhood like before working in animation?
Well, I didn't work on animation until I was in my 30s. I did it at home. I grew up with Monty Python, and Terry Gilliam's animations were a huge influence on me, and I used to just try to copy them and do his were the cutout paper animations, and nothing digital at all about it. It was too early, and so it was all frame by frame film. So I did a lot of that, and I did some clay animation and all that, but it was just, I never thought of doing anything with it on a professional level. That came later when I was out living in LA doing, working in film and TV, and I moved back east, and Kevin, speaking of Kevin Clash, he introduced me to one of the producers at Sesame Street, and I told her I'd like to do some animation. She said, "Well, usually," and this is actually now also to put it in context, this was season 28 and 29, because in season 30, the whole format changed.
Yeah.
It used to be, a collage of film clips and puppet work and guests, and then it became kind of like 4-segment show that was much more defined. So the freelance animators would propose ideas, and then, if they liked the idea, then they took it to the next step. So it wasn't until then that I got to do some real animation work. So that was that part of the childhood. It wasn't so much animation as it was just making. Have you heard of Super 8? Do you know what Super 8 film is? Are you too young for that?
I've heard of it a little bit.
Yeah, this was all pre-video, and there was 16 millimeter film, 8 millimeter, Super 8. Super 8 was popular in the 70s. So we were making our own movies, Billy and I and some friends, live action stuff. So we spent a lot of time with that, and I spent a lot of time drawing as well. Um, but is that the part about the childhood you wanted to know, really?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
sure.
yeah. So, now transitioning into, well, I wouldn't say transitioning, but as far as becoming an author and illustrator, how did that kind of all come about? Like, what made you want to get into that?
It's really interesting because for me anyway, it's the career I feel like I was made to do because um, I'm a homebody for one, so I get to work from home. You see back here, this isn't my best studio space. After I divorced, we sold the house where I had this great entire floor studio, but now I'm just in an apartment. You can see I've got things arranged so that I can
Mm.
do my work here. Um, but um, wait, where was I with that? What was I talking? Oh, how did I get into that? Oh, so yeah, so I can live from home, right? And I can do my work from home, and I can tell stories, which is why I went to NYU Film School and majored in that and worked in film and TV for a while. And now the books are like I'm making my own mini movies where I'm doing everything really, art directing and character designing and writing and everything that goes with it. And of course, it's still very collaborative. Do you need to go through? Go ahead. There's my son's going through. There's Ben. Um, so I never really thought of it as a professional career. And there was a time because I wanted to be a film director, but then I left LA, I came back east, and there was a time for like 2 years, where I was struggling to figure out what I was going to do next. And for the life of me, I never once thought book author, book illustrator, until I started meeting some local authors and illustrators outside of the Philadelphia area, where I live outside of Philadelphia. And then and so it occurred to me then. And so I went full force into trying to make that work. And I wish I wish the idea had come to me sooner. I'd have, you know, that much, meant that many more years put into what I'm doing now. So it really just started by meeting others who do it and realizing that that's where I could put my focus. Um, and it became a whole new learning curve because when I wrote some scripts when I was working in film and TV, and it's a whole different technique to write books, and especially children's books, because you've got to take into account the word count and the vocabulary, all these things that would be different if you were just writing for adults, and you could write as long as you want and get as embellish as much as you want in what you're writing, things like that. So I've learned a great deal from just since I've been in it. It wasn't like one of those things where I studied how to do it for a long time before I even started applying myself to it. I knew enough to start working. I started as an illustrator, and I knew enough to do that for other writers. And so for a number of years, I was just illustrating. And then eventually I tried my hand at writing, and I went through, a whole period. I started, writing and illustrating. And then eventually I started writing for other illustrators and broadening what I do. But I don't remember how I got to that. I learned so much about this career once I started doing it, because I got in just knowing as much as I knew. And then when I said I'd like to write, then there was a huge amount that I had to add to that and put toward it to make it into a career. So, and I keep getting surprised by new things that can happen in this career, as far as what can happen to your books once they go out into the world. Sometimes they'll be made in other languages, and one of my books is done in a couple languages, including Braille, which I never expected to happen.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Here's an example of that. Look, Now and Ben. So
Nice.
they don't even print
Yeah.
it. They don't print the Braille onto the page, except for this opening page. What they do is they put these transparent sheets on top of the page that have the braille on top.
Oh wow.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, and all these different conferences and like awards and speaking engagements, all this cool stuff that you find out can be part of your career. Well, one of the most, one of the biggest honors I had was, I'm looking up at this award nomination for I did a book on George Washington Carver, and the NAACP nominated it for an Image Award, which was really a cool thing. And what made it even cooler was that one of the other people competing was LeBron James. So I get to say that
Oh
I
my
competed
God.
against LeBron James.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
funny.
And
Wow.
neither one of us won. So,
Ah,
Ah.
it's a good icebreaker if I ever meet him,
yeah. Yeah.
Like, hey, I competed against you, but we never won.
And we,
None
neither
of
one
us won.
Yeah.
Neither one of us won.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Going way back, do you remember what your very first job was as an author?
As an author was the book I just showed you, Now and Ben. It's the subtitle is The Modern Inventions of Benjamin Franklin, and it's all about the amazing amount of things he invented or helped discover that we still use today. And I did
Nice.
a whole series of those. I did the same idea with Leonardo da Vinci and with Thomas Edison. That was a really, and that's been a really successful series. Now and Ben came out in 2006, and I'm still getting nice royalty checks with it, because that's another thing. I found that books sometimes, especially nonfiction, will go into school curriculum or be part of anthologies and things like that. And that's what's happened with some of the books. So that was the first one that I wrote. First one I illustrated was just one of those. They're called mass market books. Like they're the kind you'll see in bookstores for the very young kids. And for example, it might be a hard book, what's it called? The pages are a hard cardboard, and in the binder of the book they have little toys. Like I did one on bugs and dinosaurs, and they have little
Oh
bugs
yeah,
and
okay.
dinosaur toys and stuff.
Yeah.
And I did some books based on. I worked for Between the Lions. Do you know that show?
Oh gosh, love
Yeah.
that show.
It's great.
Yes, love Between the
Beautiful
Lines.
show.
Such a
Wonderful
wonderful
show.
show. Love it
Yeah,
so
I did.
much.
That was actually, now that I'm thinking of it, I worked with them between the Sesame Street animating and the publishing work I did. It was kind of a transition.
Huh.
Everything I've done from the time I started with Sesame Street, I think. Was it? Yeah, I guess so. Has been through networking and meeting people through these wider, just a wider network of people that come from either publishing or TV or film or whatever. And so I did a couple books for Between the Lions and even some style guides, because they wanted to have illustrated versions of what those characters looked like if they were illustrated. So if they wanted to put them on T-shirts or mugs or whatever, they had a defined image or a defined look as to what these puppets would look like if they were illustrated. So I did work with them on that for a while. Yeah.
And I saw in one
Yeah,
of the
it's really
Beretta Brothers episodes, you talked about how you even made a cameo in one of the episodes,
Yeah, I did.
which is interesting.
It
Yeah.
was cool. Just they had, a lot of it took place in a big library, and so they just had several people human beings walk in like they were, looking for stuff in the library, and I just got to be one of those. That was fun.
That's great. Yeah, Between the Lines is a wonderful show, and we've had a number of other people from that show on, like Christopher Surf,
Oh yeah, cool.
Norman Stiles, and a lot of the puppeteers from it too. So
Right.
Yep. Jen
That's where I
always
first
fun.
met some. That's where I first met some of those puppeteers. I think, like Jennifer Barnard and
Peter
Peter,
Lenz,
and yeah,
Anthony Asbury.
I think I met them there first. Yeah.
nice,
Mhm.
nice.
Pam.
Yeah,
That's
a lot of
such
wonderful
wonderful.
people.
Yes. Yes, wonderful show. So now in the 90s, you create a number of animated inserts for Sesame Street that you kind of just mentioned. What was it like kind of getting to do those?
It was, well, I was about to say it was kind of tough, but I don't think it seems like it would be when I describe how I had to do it, but I really enjoyed the whole process because these were done traditionally, meaning, and these are on my website too, if you want to look at them. There, I did them traditionally, where every frame was hand drawn. There was nothing digital about it other than the fact that, because this was also, remember, still like the mid to late 90s. And I guess, there was of course computer animation, but wasn't used nearly as commonly as it is today. And so the only time they used computers was instead of, in the old days, they would, I'm putting this Dr. Pepper away and I'm just drinking water so I don't burp all the time. There. I should know that by now. So, they would have the background and then you would put the character over top of the background on clear celluloid.
Mm-hmm.
So you could see through that and you'd have the two of them combined and you just keep replacing the cell with character. We did it basically the same way, only I just drew the character on white paper and they scanned it into the computer and they got rid of the white around the character and then composited it with the background. But what was difficult was that each of these animations were 1 minute long, and I basically only had a month to do each one, which meant that first I had to record all the sound, which included 2 songs, which I wrote and performed. And then you have these time charts where you have to block out, especially if you're doing something to a beat or you're doing lip sync, you have to block out how many frames it takes for someone to say, hello, how are you? And where those syllables come in so that you know how to shape the mouths and everything. So that had to be done before then I even started to do any drawing. And so within those animations, I think there's some really nice moments. And then there's these little cheats that sometimes you'll see in broadcast animation, where, especially in well, you'll see, for example, a character standing still and they wave hello, and you can tell that the body is the same drawing, but they've isolated the arms so that they move that separately. I did a few of those little things in there too. The only thing I had to hire somebody to do was to be my colorist. And so the first year I did three films. Second year I did 2 films. Yeah, but one of the really cool things was that this woman, Suzanne Twining, was my colorist the second year, and I got her right out of school. She's from Baltimore area too, by the way, but I think she was going to school up in the Philly
Nice.
area, and I hired her to do the coloring. And you know what she's gone on to do? She is one of the major puppet animators. She's worked on Coraline and the latest Pinocchio and Box Trolls, and
Oh wow, that's nice.
yeah, she does
Awesome.
amazing stop motion animation work. So yeah, so that was that's the animation process. So yeah, it was just doing all that work within a month's time. That was a challenge, but we did it all right.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Nice. And you also mentioned earlier doing storyboards for Muppets from Space. What was that
Yeah.
experience like?
It was a lot of fun. I wasn't there for the whole production. I was really just there for a couple weeks before they were shooting, and then just a week of them shooting. And I was there with the guy named Darren. Darren, sorry, Darren, if you're hearing this, I'm getting your name off. There were 2 of us storyboarding, and they would. There was a lot of freedom with it at the start of it, because they would basically give us the script and we would just take our turn at blocking out the shots we thought might work, and telling a story almost like a comic book in a way. But you'd also have these marks, you'd make these marks on the image, like an arrow showing which way the camera panned, or whether the camera zoomed in, showing the rectangle of the frame going closer and closer to the face, things like that. And then you'd have dialogue along the side so they knew where this was taking place in the film. but then of course, they don't always get used, and so you see the storyboards up on a little, a chart, and sometimes they just will ignore them because a new idea comes up, or the director has a different idea, things like that. But so that's, between the two of us, we did that, plotted out the whole movie. But the real fun was just being there with Billy. And we were in North Carolina, Wilmington, North Carolina, at Sony Studios. Is that what it was? I think so. And just having a fun time. They put us in, especially, you wouldn't believe the house we were in. Because they put us in this small house, and we're all living right on this island, this strip, that Wrightsville Beach, that is right on the coast. And there's all these just beach houses, and they put us in this nice, compact house. And within a couple days, they said, we need that house for something else, so we have to move you. I said, all right, fine. They put us in a 3-story house that had an indoor pool, a huge kitchen, like we were living in luxury. And then, so it was just the two of us for a little while, and then Brian Henson came down and stayed there, and then invited family. After I left, then Billy invited family down and filled the house and had parties and everything. But we lived in this amazing beach mansion, which was really cool. But just being able to hang around on the sets, and when my work was done, I could just walk. I would walk into where they were filming. What was the popular series with? Man, can you believe my memory? It's Dawson's Creek. Dawson's Creek.
Oh yeah, okay.
Things like that, and I think they had just filmed the Big Bird movie before us.
Oh no, it was Elmo and Grouchland, I think.
Elmo and
Yes, you're
Grouchland,
right. You're
yeah.
right. You're
Yeah.
right. Elmo and Grouchland.
Yeah.
They had
Love
just
that
done
movie.
that before us. And so it was just a cool location to be in, and thinking if there's any other stories that came with it. No, not that oh, well, I got to see them shoot before I left. I saw them shoot the scene where they're creeping up on a location where Ray Liotta is the guard.
Oh yeah.
Remember that one?
Mm.
Yeah, so I met Ray, and got to watch them shoot that stuff. And then I watched them shoot the scene where everybody is outside of their house, uh, wanting to meet Gonzo, and this woman, this like real hippie type woman, comes up and wants to touch him. And do you remember which one I'm talking about?
Yeah.
All like
I
calling.
think so, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there was that scene. Got to watch Gonzo cutting the lawn on this electronic, using electronic Gonzo on a tractor cutting a lawn, little things like that. I wish I could have stayed longer, but I actually had to get back. To do some of this Sesame Street animation, because that had a deadline too. So I could only stay for a certain amount of time. I had to come back up here to Philly.
Awesome. So now you even briefly puppeteered with the Muppets, performing a few background characters on Muppet Treasure Island. So what was it kind of like? Can you do that?
It was just how could it be anything other than fun? It was one of those things where you don't even expect to do it, but they just like you'll hear Jane, from on the stage, like Kevin shouting from up on the ship. Have you seen pictures of how that set looked?
Oh yeah.
Where the ship was up on these risers and things, so they could move it like it's on water and all that. So I would just be hanging out. Here, Gene, get up here, and just he put this hog on my arm, and it was the last scene when they're all dancing on the boat.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So And I was standing right
Nice.
next to Jerry, which was cool. I forget who he was doing. It wasn't a major character. It was just like a background thing. And they got all the wives in there. Everybody was on the boat doing some kind of chicken or rat or something. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so that was amazing, just dancing along to that. I know I can pick out my warthog because I had his head tilted back the whole time doing a dance like this with his mouth open. Um, and then the other one I did was there's a scene where they're having a tiki party on the boat, and the camera's panning around the dock, or not the dock,
Mhm.
the you know the the main floor of the boat outside. I knew there's a real name for that, but I can't think of it. And there's two rats sitting on a barrel in love, just like cheek to cheek, and they're both remote control. And I was doing one of those rats, and I don't try to remember who I did that with. I know I have it written down somewhere, but I got to do that rat sitting on a barrel.
Nice.
Oh, and then they took, they were taking publicity photos of the characters, and I was around to just like, nobody was puppeteering really. It's a form of puppeteering, but they were just still for the photographs. And I did some rats, the vacationing rats. And I remember mine had like a sailor's cap and stuff like that.
Hmm. That's
So I
cool.
got to do that. It was the coolest week. This was the coolest week of my life, probably. I went over there just for like the week to while they were filming, and I got to not only do what I just mentioned, but then also just hang out with everybody and meet Tim Curry and hang out back like Billy and Jim Hawkins. Well, we were singing back, we were singing Beatles songs in the dressing room, Billy.
Oh, really? Oh, that's nice.
That's great.
And then we got to go to Abbey Road Studios because Louise Gold was doing a session there.
Oh, yeah.
I
Ah,
love
Louise.
Louise.
Yeah.
She's the
The
best.
Beatles and Billy and my all-time favorite group, and just grew up. Their music is the soundtrack to our lives. And she was
That's
doing a session
wonderful.
there on a Sunday, so we got to go hang out inside Abbey Road Studios for a good amount of time,
Oh,
which
wow.
was just like heaven,
Wow.
And there was a keyboard they used that I just got to fiddle around with, and that happened. And then in the same week, we went to
Awesome.
one of the major museums there in London, and they were having a show, a temporary exhibit which was a tribute to Jim Henson, and I'm walking through, and right in front of me is one of the puppets that was named after me, Eugene the Wild Dog, who's from Jim Henson's Animal Show. Is that what it's called?
Ah,
Animal Show. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I was thinking Animal Planet, Animal Show. Yeah, so I got to see one of my genes, which is now one of four genes out there. I got to see one in person.
Nice, nice. And I know you also, I heard that you also got to meet Jim Henson and Fred Rogers
Yeah,
and spend a good time with them. What was it like meeting them?
amazing. The well, Billy and I both met him just very briefly when we were working at Sesame Place because he came to visit the park. But then, and you probably know that when we were working there, because Sesame Place is near where we grew up,
Right,
up
yeah.
in,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
and one summer Brian Henson just showed up to be an employee there, just like everybody else, and we were shocked at first, and then became very good friends with him over that summer. So we stayed friends with him, and whenever he was back in the area, we would get together or go up to New York and see him and all that. And one day we drove up to see him in New York, and it wasn't until we parked our car that we said, "Oh, we're going to the Sherry Netherlands Hotel. Wait, could that be Jim's place? I don't know. Let's maybe." So we went upstairs, and it was. And not only was Brian there, but Jim was there with like five or six other friends, and so we just got to hang out for a little while, and that was just that was the coolest thing. Um,
That's wonderful.
yeah, so that was that, and then we were at his memorial too, which was a very beautiful event. Um, And with Fred Rogers, after I had written him a fan letter years before I worked on Sesame Street, and he wrote a nice reply back, and that was the end of that. Um, Speaking of letters, I think you probably heard the story of how I wrote Jim Henson a letter when I was like 14. Did
Oh
you ever
yeah,
see that
yeah.
or anything?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so um, that was my other connection with Jim once because I asked, how do you make Muppets? And he sent me back instructions and a letter and all that. So my letter writing has had some really nice, has given me some great opportunities because I wrote, then when I had done the Sesame Street animations, I wrote back to Fred Rogers and just let him know what I have been doing. And I think since I mentioned that I'd worked for Sesame Street, he thought, oh, like he's not some crazy guy who's gonna show up and 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 murder the whole cast and crew. So he said, well, that's wonderful. Look, next time you're in the neighborhood, look us up. And so I thought, well, of course I will. And so I immediately called whoever was, his some of his people, and I arranged to drive out to Pittsburgh where they shot the show, and spent the good part of the day there while they were. It was during the summer, and they were doing some pickup shooting, and they had the neighborhood of make believe set up, and met Lady Aberlin and um, Speedy Delivery,
David
Mr.
Newell.
McFeely.
Yes, Mr. McFeely, yeah.
David,
And
he's
he took
just
me
the
around. He walked
best.
me around to see the offices too, which was really nice of him.
Oh,
And
wow.
and then I walked around with Mr. Rogers for a little while, who's exactly the way he is on TV, and um, he took me behind the set, which was cool because I'd actually had dreams of being behind the set, and suddenly I was there, and I was looking up at the same windows that the puppets peer out of and all that, and he let me put on King Friday and play with him a little. Um,
Oh.
That's great.
and then yeah, it was amazing. And then he said, "Come here, I want to show you something." And the guy who did the music for the show, Joe Negri, um,
Yeah.
right? He said, "Here, you want to watch Joe get yell at me?" And so he walked me over to the piano, and he started playing the piano. And you hear, "Get off the piano, Fred," or something like that. And he goes, "You see?" and he kept playing the piano.
Oh, that's funny.
This
Yeah,
is a good
we've
lesson
had.
for all you youngins out there.
Yes.
Don't be afraid to take a chance on putting yourself out there and trying to just grab something that you want to do, because you just never know what kind of reaction you're going to get from people or places that you try to visit or meet or whatever it is. Just have some, you figure, what's the worst that can
Faith
happen?
or
I'll
something.
just say no,
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah, that and also writing letters. I know John Tartaglia, who we've had on recently,
Love
also
Johnny so much.
wrote a fan letter to Jim Henson.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so yeah, write letters. That's
Yeah.
even though it might be crazy, it still works to this
Yeah.
day.
Oh, yeah.
The illustrator Jay Foskett? You guys know him?
I've
He's
heard of
Maybe.
the name. I've heard
Yeah,
of the
he
name.
did the same thing.
Really?
He wrote a letter and got one back from Jim, and it's one of the ones hanging at Museum of Modern Image in that whole exhibit.
Ooh,
Oh, nice.
Oh,
nice.
wow.
That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
Nice.
That's amazing. But yes, the lesson we've learned today: write letters. That's pretty
Or
much
I
Yes.
guess emails. I guess
Our
emails
emails,
too.
yeah.
Emails
Either
too.
way.
Yeah.
Either way.
Yeah.
Just write. Just write.
just don't be a pain in
Um.
the neck about it. Like some
Yeah.
people take
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
overboard. It's like,
Yeah.
what the heck?
Yeah. Just don't take it overboard.
Right.
So for the Jim Henson Company, you designed the characters for a series that was in development years ago called Late Night Buffet. Could you kind of talk a bit about your work on that?
It was well, the show was it was like a late night talk show, and the two hosts were these huge puppets, and then they had human guests, and they did two pilot episodes with it, and there was also, so they were puppets, and then the band were also puppets. and there were three monkeys and a woman who was the singer. And I mean, it was really, it was just, I would talk with Billy and Brian, and they'd give me some ideas about what the characters need to be and a sense of what they might look like. And then I just make, a dozen versions of each, and they'll choose something and I'll revise it. And yeah, so it didn't get picked up, but excuse me, but Dell, as Billy's character, got used in a few shorter segments that were like online segments that they would do. And some of the monkeys were used. One of them was used in a show that actually did air called Late Night Liars. Do you remember that one?
Oh yeah. Hmm.
Yeah,
Yes.
that monkey character. I think they made a little bit. I think they changed him up a little bit, but he was originally from Late Night Buffet. And then one of the monkeys, you know how Nicolette Santino has been traveling around the world with Coldplay,
Oh
Oh
yes.
yeah,
performing
Yeah.
Angel
yes,
Moon. Well, Angel Moon
yes.
has a band, and one of the monkeys is in that band. So it's cool to see
Ah, no
them there.
kidding. That's cool.
So yeah, they keep showing up. Some of them have been used in the Stuffed and Unstrung, um, wait, there's two titles for it. Uh, Puppet
Pump it
Up
up.
and Beyond, and yeah,
Oh
Stuffed
yeah.
and
Yep.
Unstrung. Yeah.
Absolutely. So back to writing books. You've written a bunch of
Uh,
books that focus around like Muhammad Ali, Lincoln, and Kennedy. Can you kind of talk about writing those kind of books?
sure. By the way, here's a cast of Muhammad Ali's fist.
Oh,
Oh wow,
Ah, wow.
that's
I have
great.
I have a life mask collection. I think I have 25 now. Here's just to my. Would you recognize him, or are you too young? Maybe
I don't
it's
think
Marlon
so.
Brando.
Oh,
It's Marlon
nice.
Brando. Yeah,
Oh, and Brenda. Yes,
Ah,
I know them. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, nice.
I've got a lot of people here. Most of them are in storage, but I have Jack Nicholson, Peter Sellers, Paul and Ringo.
Oh, wow.
Uh, oh, here, show you Tim Curry. You'll appreciate that. Here's Tim.
oh
Uh-huh.
Oh,
wow,
nice.
that's awesome.
I just think it's so cool to actually see exactly what they looked like. And
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
I don't know what this one was made for. I do have descriptions about, what some of these masks were made for originally. I don't know his though. I don't know what Tim's was made for. Be nice to be able to ask him at some point. Um, uh, so yeah, Muhammad Ali. I have his mask too, but I just have his
Nice.
hands here. What did you want to know about the
Like
Ali
writing
and everything?
books about like Muhammad Ali, Lincoln, Kennedy.
Yeah,
Like, what's your
let's see.
overall like, why doing those?
Why do I like the biographies? Because, well, it's usually just based on who I'm actually writing about. These are people that I've always admired, but even people that some of these books I've brought the idea to the publisher, and it was my idea. Some of them, the ideas were brought to me because the illustrators wanted to do these books but didn't have manuscripts, so I got paired up with them. And um, like George Washington Carver, I don't know if you guys are familiar with him, but he did amazing inventions and scientific experiments with things like the peanut and the soy nut and all sorts of things. I had no idea about anything beyond that, and just discovered what an amazing guy he was. And the same with Muhammad Ali. I mean, of course, I know all the popular stuff about him, but once I was finished with my research, I just had such a great degree of admiration and love for him. The way and the courage that he had to do all these things outside of boxing that he felt was the right thing to do when it came to the civil rights movement and all of that. And this I did my last release actually was called Starring Steven Spielberg, The Making of a Young
Yeah.
Filmmaker,
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
and that idea was brought to me by the illustrator as well. And I was a film student, so of course I knew his movies, but I didn't really know a lot about his childhood. and it was so cool to discover how much his his experience as a teen and a child affected the subjects that he chose to make films about. Um, he made films, and the things I identified with on a personal level was that going through his teens, just like me, all we wanted to do was make movies. So he was making his 8mm films, I was making super 8mm films, and both of our parents were starting, their marriages were starting to fall apart, so we were both going through that kind of struggle and emotional struggle. And so I hooked into that a lot, and then took a lot of the experiences that you'll later see in films, some things that are straight out of his childhood, like in E.T., when Elliot lets the frog free in the classroom. He did that. Um, and just being able to show kids how somebody who's gone on to do something that major had experiences just like they did and what he was able to do with them and the challenges that he got through. That he faced a lot of anti-Semitism growing up, and as well as the parents' divorce. And what was what was really interesting was the scheduling of it all, because we started the book in 2019, and then is it 20? It was I don't remember if it was late 2020 or early 2021. We started hearing that he's doing a film about his childhood, which became The Fablemans, and and so by the time we finished and he finished, they, I guess the publisher probably decided let's schedule it right around that time too, because we were able to. So my book came out just like a month before the movie came out. And so, the one worry I had was that I didn't want people to think, oh, this publisher, this author and all that, they just jumped on the bandwagon and put out a book because the movie's coming out. But it wasn't that at all. And and of course he also took liberties with his story, just for the sake of the film, and he admits that, but because he didn't want to make it a biography necessarily, or an autobiography necessarily. So it was nice to kind of see what he did with it versus what I was doing with it. Um, and so it's just, I'd like to do books other than biographies, and I have done some. I did some grammar books that are in school curriculum that were really fun to make. I did the one on my one fictional one is called Jack the Tripper, which is like a boy who cried wolf type of story. But I'd like to do more that aren't that don't that aren't nonfiction. Um, I'm sure I'll get to it, some more of those eventually. But
Nice.
you get hooked into things, and then you have things waiting for you to do too. So it's just finding the time to do it. I'll tell you what I'm trying to do. I'm work. Well, no, I shouldn't say anything yet. But I have another cool project coming up. It's a biography
Oh,
about a really
nice. Looking
fascinating
forward to that.
person. Well, I can tell you one thing I'm working on,
Awesome.
because that's already, there's no secret about that. Do you guys familiar with an artist named Andrew Wyeth?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You know
I
him?
think so, yeah.
He was one of the more famous American painters of the 20th century, and he lived into 2009, so he was still painting in the 21st century. But I live about 20 miles from one of the two places in his life where he lived and painted. The other was up in Maine, and they've got a great museum there, and you can visit his homes and studios. And his dad was an acclaimed, amazing children's book illustrator named N.C. Wyeth, and his other family members were autistic and everything. And so always wanted to do a book on him, and I finally found the right angle for it, and which is going to be really about his childhood, even though it tells a little bit more about what happened beyond his early 20s. Um, and the museum has been incredibly generous um, and resourceful with this, and become very friendly with them all. And it's been like it's almost like a project I don't want to end, because I'm just like, it's a dream project, and I just keep discovering more and more things about somebody I highly admire. So that's going to be out in about a year. But actually, that's some paintings hanging up on the wall there. I'm
Oh,
working on it.
nice.
Nice.
I don't want to bring
Awesome.
them close up because I don't want to show them until it's, the time is right. But, you know,
Yeah.
Nice.
yeah,
Awesome.
so that's
Awesome.
that.
Looking forward to those.
Thanks.
Now, yeah, of course. You also wrote and illustrated the book Timeless, Thomas, How Thomas Edison Changed Our Lives. Can you talk a
Yeah,
bit about that?
sure. Well, anything specific you want to know? Here, I have all my books on the shelf right next to me. I'll pull it out so you can have a little illustration of it. There's that one.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah,
Awesome.
what was cool about it, and what's interesting for a lot of kids, is to see how many things he. Now one point I wanted to make with this book was that he had a major factory where he was able to produce things on a mass scale, which was wonderful because it made it more affordable to the everyday people. And unlike some inventions that just are, out of the grasp of anybody other than very wealthy people, he had all these items that were much more affordable, and so he could mass produce them. And so it was a big factory, and there's the Edison factory you can still visit up in West Orange, New Jersey. But but I'll point out to kids like this machine right here, this wax cylinder phonograph, before this was invented. If you wanted to hear music, you had to wait until a live band showed up or you went to see one in person. But this was the first machine to record and play back any kind of sound. What would life be like without that? I also let's see what else. And I was going to mention what I made sure I did with this was that since he wasn't just the sole inventor of these things, he would collaborate with people that he worked with. I wanted to make sure that I made that point here, and I talk about how one of his greatest inventions really was the what he called the invention factory, which was the research and development lab. You can see all these different people working on all different items that either he started or someone else started, and then he worked with them on it. And or else sometimes he just bought someone's invention and mass produced it, and otherwise nobody would have probably ever heard of this work, but he helped it to really find find success. The first actually you can credit him in a way with starting Hollywood, but in a very indirect way, because he built one of the first movie studios. You can see here this building here.
Ah,
Oh, nice.
okay.
But
Nice.
what happened was, he was a
Awesome.
really what's the right word for it? The business side of things was just as alive as the creative side of it. And so he started to kind of monopolize the movie industry, and this was on the East Coast. And if you wanted to make movies, he had certain rights to certain types of equipment and all that stuff. So you couldn't really do anything without having to share profits and things. So filmmakers started to emigrate to the West Coast, and they started a whole other industry on the West Coast, which became Hollywood. So that kind of happened as a result of trying to get away from what was happening on the East Coast, where Edison kind of had control over that.
Like,
Yeah. Can you get more people that are just Muppets? Yeah. Do you actually ever bring on guests that aren't talking mainly about
Yeah.
Muppets? I'm not.
Yeah,
Do you?
we've
Yeah.
had people like we've had Joey Album, who's another animator for Sesame Street.
Oh, okay.
For example, we've had musicians on our show.
Okay,
for
good.
some authors, like for
Some
example,
authors.
Alan Katz.
Alan
Um,
Katz. Yep.
I bet they didn't know as
There's
much about Edison as I do.
no. Nope.
If you can trim that whole Edison thing if you want to. It went on, so whatever
Yeah.
you want to do with it.
So our show is just it's not like we're just doing it just for genre of puppeteers. We're kind of like, kind of like a podcast where we kind of chat with like a variety of guests,
Variety of
you know,
people.
so
Yeah.
Okay, good.
that makes the show more,
Yes.
Yeah.
more
Cut out all the times
more
I lost
enjoyable.
my memory.
So you also wrote the book The Bat Can Bat, a book
Mhm.
of true homonyms. For those who do not know, could you kind of describe what a homonym is and kind of what the book's about?
Sure, and this will actually bring us back full circle to Muppets. Well, there's homonyms. Here we go with the educational segment, folks.
Yay.
Homonyms used to be a general homonyms used to be a general term for what we now have divided into three categories. There's homonyms, homographs, homophones. Homophones are words that sound the same but are spelled differently, like my book Dear Dear, Dear, Deer. Homographs are words that are spelled the same but sound different, like my book The Bass Plays the Bass. BASS and BASS are bass and bass.
Hmm.
And homonyms, true homonyms, are words that sound the same and are spelled the same, like the bat can bat, right? So that's the distinguishing thing about it. But what I always like to put like lots of inside things in my books, and what I did for the bat can bat, which was really cool. Excuse me. I have a spread in here. Um, it says the point of fencing is to avoid the point of the sword. So you've got, for those just listening, you've got it's all about sports. It's animals, and they're all involved in these different sporting events. You've got a duck fencing with a fly. So it says the point of fencing is to avoid the point of the sword. So the fly has to duck and the duck has to fly, right? But what's cool about it and what's Muppet related is, you see the audience back there? Every single
Yeah.
person is either a Muppet performer or a friend of mine who's like a big Uber Muppet fan.
Oh,
Oh
that's right. Yeah, I think I
wow!
saw that on one of the Beretta
Wow.
Brothers episodes where you showed
Yes, that's
that.
right.
That's
That's
right.
That's
right.
right.
Yeah.
It
They're
was
all
when
in
Yeah.
it was
there.
when you had Stephanie and Craig on,
Oh,
and
right.
you
Yeah,
showed
yeah.
that. Yeah, that's amazing.
And it's showing like
Yeah.
it's
That's
showing like
right.
every single name of all
Well,
all of
I
that.
did,
Or at least tried to
That's
anyway.
yeah,
somewhere. Well,
that's
what I did
awesome.
was like, if where did I post it? I think if you like, I don't know if you can search on Facebook pages, some keywords. I don't know what it would be, but I know that I, at some point back then, a couple of years ago now, I posted the images, that image, and then close-ups of it, and also I think I numbered them all so that you could kind of make out who's who. But I even put there's not just, actually, I think there's a couple puppets in here too. There's Bobo. There's one of my monkeys. Is it just the two of them? But yeah, everybody's here. Wow. Okay. Yeah. So if you want to check that out, that's either buy the book or look for my post so you can kind of see who's who.
Yeah.
Nice. So, since the 90s, you mentioned earlier, making numerous appearances at different schools, talking about the process of writing a book and other things. How did kind of the school appearances come about?
Oh, well, yeah, I've done lots. I've done hundreds of them, and hundreds of schools, but then also several assemblies at each school. So, been doing that since the beginning for over 20 years. And it's just something that
Wow.
authors and illustrators do. Once you start doing it, you kind of put
Put
you
yourself
put
to the
your name
table,
up
yeah.
there, and yeah, and you call, even call the schools directly and let them know you're available, and eventually, people start to spread the word. Um, and I haven't traveled too far out of like the northeastern area for mine. But I've done some during COVID. I did a virtual one to Barcelona, which was cool because the students did speak English. Um, but I've done that. The most prestigious one I ever did was, there's a place in New York called the 92nd Street Y, which like every amazing person has been up on that stage talking about what they do. And I'm not including myself in that category of people, but I was asked, they were doing some some programs that were oriented toward an elementary school aged audience. And so twice they asked me to come up and talk about, first time I did Neo Leo, which was my Leonardo da Vinci book. And then I think it was even the night before the elections in 2016, I did my Lincoln and Kennedy book. But that was just so cool to know that I was up on that same stage that was shared by so many people I admire. But I've done all sorts of ones like that, or spoke at conferences. These are things, like I said, you discover once you step into the industry. You don't know that it's even part of what's in front of you until you get asked to do it, or you see friends of yours who are doing it. Yeah. So the assemblies, I really like. I spend roughly an hour, 45 minutes to an hour, and I'll talk to kids about the whole process of writing books and illustrating books, and questions and answers. And I do my most popular one is one I do for my book Now and Ben, about Ben Franklin, because one of my
Yeah,
close,
visit with Ben Franklin and me.
Yes, yeah.
there's Now and Ben. I have a
Mhm.
great close friend who's one of Philadelphia's best Ben Franklin interpreters. And so we'll do the assemblies together, and I'll save the reading of the book till the second half, and they don't know he's going to be there. And once I start reading, I ask kids a question about one of the pages I'm reading, and they're trying to guess how many pages he could have printed in one day, because he was a printer as well as all these other things. I said, it would be really cool if we had Ben Franklin here to answer that question. And he walks out and shocks all these elementary school age kids. So it's a really cool
Oh,
thing.
that's
great.
great.
Yeah.
Jinx.
He's so great at it too.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
That's really cool.
Yes. Speaking of appearances, I recently, actually last year, and you're going to do it actually again later this year. You actually appeared for a Muppets event. The Muppets Take Mahoning.
Mahoning, yeah.
Mahoning, yeah. What was it
yeah,
kind of like?
well,
You there?
I kind of what's the word for it? I coordinated that whole event. My son Ben and I have been going to this amazing drive-in called the Mahoning Drive-In, which is above Allentown, Pennsylvania. And actually, there's even a movie about it on Amazon Prime called At the Drive-In. And
Oh, nice.
the reason there's a movie about it is that in 2014, all the drive-ins have gone digital, and they've had to spend a fortune on digital projectors and all that. But the Mahoning had to make the decision as to whether they were going to do that or remain a retro drive-in and stay 35 millimeter film. Excuse me. And so they did that. And I think they're having more success than most drive-ins that show, current first run films, because, they have such a community of people that come from all over the United States sometimes, and they're known about in Europe. And every weekend is like a new theme. People dress up. Some stars come from the films. They decorate the place. It's every weekend is just, you see your friends every weekend, and so we go.
Yeah.
Like, there's some people that go to almost every show. We went like 15 times, I think, last season. But so we got to know the people really well. Even just so I went and I said, well, I should do a Muppet one. And he said, yeah, okay, let's try it out. We'll do one night, let's see how it goes. And we sold out, and it was just amazing. Billy and I did a podcast of the whole thing. Well, not the whole thing. We did it up until the movie started. So
Yeah, that's
if you
right.
weren't there,
Yeah.
you missed some other things. Like we did a sing-along at intermission. But we're doing it again this year. We're going to do it on May 17th and 18th.
Yeah, May, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And we've already picked out the films, but they didn't announce them yet, so I don't think I can say. But we had an amazing amount of activities, and it was I'm going to try and get some performers out there this year. It didn't happen last year because they were all working on some projects and things. But I can't wait to do it again, because it was so well received. All these fans, probably people everybody was bringing their own puppets, and they were having these little spontaneous
Yeah.
puppet circles,
Yeah.
things like that. And then
Yeah.
Brian came on and surprised them, and Ed Christie came on and told some stories because we showed the Muppet movie and then the Muppets from 2011. So Ed talked about his time on the first one, and just so cool. We had Muppet. We had in the snack bar. We had Manama nachos, which was
That's
cool.
funny.
And we already have some ideas
That's
for
great.
some new ones for this year. Photo opportunities. Yeah, so I can't say enough about the Mahoning Drive-In. I'm sure we'll be going a lot again this year. Yeah.
Awesome.
And people get there like 3 hours ahead of the movie just to hang out. That's my favorite part. Sometimes my son and I, sometimes we go just to hang out for 3 hours, and then we don't even feel like staying for the movie sometime when we drive back home. Yeah.
So now, aside from writing and illustrating books, you've also created your own paintings. How did that doing that come into play for you?
Well, I've always painted from the time I was a young kid, and the way that's just doing my own like fine art painting started because my editor and my agent both said, we'd like to see you work on maturing your style in a certain way, like your palette. And see, because I'm self-taught, and so I only know what I know. And so they said, we love your animal characters. We want you to see, try to work on a different style for your humans and all that. And then I was writing things where my old cartoony style didn't really fit the tone of the book. And so with making this Andrew Wyeth book, I thought there's no way I can do that in this older cartoony style. So I had to start, painting like a fine art painter. And one way I started that whole process was to go out and do plein air paintings. And plein air is a term meaning you go and you paint outside. So landscapes and buildings, and people can be in them too. But so being so close to where the Wyeth family was and where he worked, I went to a lot of the locations where he painted and started painting there. And I found that the way I started to paint came from just what I learned about how Andrew Wyeth painted. And not that I've gotten anything close to how incredible he paints, but as I painted, I was making decisions based on how I knew he would approach it. And I've been really happy, and people have really been happy with, sorry, I can't show you the paintings behind me, but I've been really pleased. But it was a couple of years, and I can't understate how much of a struggle it was for me for a couple of years, which is why I was just writing for a while, because I just had no idea how I was going to make that transition, because like I said, I was never formally trained. So I just had to kind of find it by self-educating again and making lots of mistakes. And I found it. And my editor and everybody has really been pleased with them. So that's why I started doing the fine art, which you can also, I've been selling prints too, which is nice. There have been people that like the work enough to, and you can go to my website, of course, and there's a link to where you can see the prints of some of that some more figurative and realistic styles, including one that I did at the Mahoning Drive-In. Yeah.
Nice.
So I'm glad. So you've been to my website, so you've seen that. Yeah.
Yes,
Of course.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So yeah, so you've also done the podcast, which we've brought up many times throughout this, the Beretta Brothers with your brother Gene. What's it like doing with
Your
that?
brother Bill,
With Bill.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, who's a good friend and previous guest. Absolutely love
Previous
Bill.
guests.
Love Billy.
Yes. So how did
What was the question?
Like how did the Beretta Brothers start? Like did it because it was kind of like during I guess the height of the pandemic. Is that kind of how it started as like a pandemic kind of thing?
That's exactly how it started because Billy couldn't work, right? There was nothing happening.
Yeah.
Nobody could go and be on sets and all that. I could have my work slowed down. When I say it slowed down, it only slowed down because I slowed it down because not I didn't have a hard deadline, but the publishing houses were also slowed down a little bit too. But anyway, so Billy and I we would just be FaceTiming and it just having such a great time and saying this, maybe we should just do something like that because everybody's going online and making their own programs and things. And I don't remember what drove us to just, I guess it didn't take too long to say we should do something that's Muppet oriented because of all the resources we have. At the start of it, which it didn't pan out the way we had planned. And we thought we were going to do like part of it was going to be like family members coming on like in the second half because our family's pretty crazy and there's all these great stories to tell and all that. But after a couple tries, we just realized that it wasn't as engaging as just keeping it, bringing in guests that were either artists or puppeteers or people in the Muppet world, and that was just it was like a full-time job. That's why we went on hiatus eventually because we both got busy again, and there was no way we
Yeah.
could do it on a part-time basis.
Yeah, because I think that was around the time that Mayhem started
Yeah,
filming, yeah.
Yeah.
and I just had to get back into full gear on some of my projects too. But we did it for about a year and we did about 60 episodes. There was, I think I did like 5 episodes just myself because I think he was busy with Mayhem. When I brought on some
Yeah.
guests and I asked them like the same 5 questions to get their answers to. But it was so much fun because, there was so much isolation happening during COVID. So I knew every week I was going to have that social interaction and I got a chance to meet lots of people that Billy already knew, these major celebrities that I admire like Ricky Gervais and Danny Trejo and all these great people. I knew most of the Muppet people already, but it was great to just have more extensive conversations with them. And then it was also cool to do some of those larger themed episodes like we did. I think we had, how many people did we have? Like 80 people on that dinosaurs episode.
Yes.
And then we
Whoa.
did like
That's right.
4 other episodes where we broke
Yeah.
down everything on dinosaurs and
Yeah. And in the one episode that we basically you guys had to bring it all together for Dave's 50th
that one too. Yeah.
anniversary.
That
Yeah.
was huge too.
I love that one so much. I was so
Yeah.
happy for Dave.
Yeah, it was
So
cool.
happy for him.
I think the dinosaurs one was like over 3 hours. I don't think we knew what we were getting into. We brought on so many people, and it's a technical nightmare. It already became like a running joke that we were going to screw something up technically because the first several episodes there was always something going wrong. But yeah, we just love doing it. But then now we'll just kind of do something if number one, we have the time to do it quickly. And like you'll notice in like the first half of the episodes we were spending time editing in like full screen images of things and Billy would, you would see us all like you see us now, just all of our squares, rectangles. But then he would take the time to isolate one of those and bring it full screen in post-production and all that. And we just couldn't do that. We just basically had to do it all live. And so if we wanted to bring up an image, I would just bring it in live on the show, and that worked out fine. But yeah, we'll only do it now if there's something really important to talk about or we have the time and we can do it. And maybe there'll be another time where we have a break where we can get in, do a more consistent output. Because I know there's several people that are still on our list that we'd love to get on and talk to.
Nice.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Nice.
Yeah, Barretta Brothers, such a wonderful podcast. Such
Yes.
Thanks. We had so much fun
So
doing
great.
it. And it became like, and we would get, we would do episodes that just involved our viewers and the fans,
Mm-hmm.
to really
Kind of
make
make
it
it a little bit interactive too.
yeah,
fan
make it more
interaction, yeah.
personal and to the people watching it. And we would have, at least for the second half of those 60 shows or so, we were doing it live on YouTube. So we would have all the live chat going on, and we would bring in some of those questions and conversations. But we would also have, like, we had the America's Got Muppet Talent episode where we brought people in to perform.
Yeah.
And we did the Muppet Illustrator episode where we had 4 really popular illustrators that did great Muppet work. I know we did some other things too. I always tried to, one of the running things that kept happening, I always tried to surprise Billy at the beginning with just some little bit that I would do just as we first came on. And sometimes it failed completely. And other times, what are you laughing about? What are you thinking of?
I mean, Billy's just, when he's like, "Oh, gee, what are you doing? What?
He's like,
that
"Oh, here
sounds
we go."
wrong."
I think
Here we go. This is a bit.
Some of the funniest moments in the Beretta Brothers, I think, is whenever you have Frank on and whenever Frank and Dave interact.
Yeah, they just go at each other. Yeah.
Gosh.
Always love those
Yeah,
moments.
lots of fun.
Yeah.
So,
Can I wait for more episodes? Of course.
yes.
Me too.
Yes. So,
What
to
was the
wrap,
last one we did? I guess the last ones we did were all Muppets. I think we did 4 episodes on the Muppets Mayhem and brought it.
Yeah.
That's right, yeah.
different
Love
characters
those
and all that.
episodes.
yeah, that's wonderful.
Yes, enjoy those very much.
Yes. So,
Such a great show. I don't know what the hell's wrong with Disney. They just,
yeah.
Season 2, baby, let's go.
I know. Seriously, you've got Emmy now.
Too. All right.
Yeah.
But Disney, what do you think about now? You can have they got Emmys.
Yeah.
Yeah, now
What
it's
are you gonna do?
Well, we'll just have to wait and see on what the next big Muppet thing is,
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
I'm not saying.
right, yeah. To wrap this up, the last question that Jake's going to ask is a question we ask all of our guests at the end. Go ahead, Jake.
So, of course, this podcast is called Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show. When you think of nostalgia, what do you think of? Or in your own words, how would you define the word nostalgia?
Well, nostalgia is different for everybody. I think it has to do with how you connect with the past based on your own memories and how they shaped your life, and oftentimes those nostalgic moments are what shaped you. And so I think when you think of nostalgia, it's always based on something personal to you, because something's not nostalgic for one person when it is for another. It's not just like a category. Well, I guess people use it as a category in a general sense, but when people discuss it one-on-one or in the group and they're mentioning that's really nostalgic, they're connecting it to something specific in their own past or in their own mind. Yeah. So it's usually, I don't know if I've ever heard something nostalgic being a negative experience. Maybe it has been, I'm just not thinking of it now, but it's usually something that has a nice tone, that's like warm and fuzzy, where it's not like, hey, let's get nostalgic. What about that Civil War, huh? And all those people dying on the fields, it's usually like, hey, do you remember when people would only go to the movie theater to see things? And, it's like that kind of thing. Or when my grandmother used to come over and always bring her best apple pie and,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes, a great
that's what
standoff.
it means to me.
Gene, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. This was a blast.
You're welcome.
Yes, pleasure. Thank you so much for being on, and thank you so much for what you've done. What you've done with illustrating and writing for all these years, and thank you for doing to be a part of our lives, and keep up the great work of what you're doing now. And I cannot wait what's next in store for you, especially the future, Barretta Brothers, and everything else that you
Thanks. Sorry for all the senior moments.
with all.
That's okay.
No worries at all. No worries at all.
Yes.
Yeah. Keep in touch, and I'll let you know when this goes up.
All right, sounds good. Thank you, guys.
All right. Enjoy the rest
Yeah,
of your
of
day,
course.
Gene.
You too.
Take care, Gene.
All right.
Yeah, Gene. Thank you so
Bye.
much again.
Bye.
Bye.
See ya. Bye.
It's goodbye from us as well. We absolutely enjoyed our time with Gene Beretta. Of course, as I'm sure a lot of you know, we previously interviewed Bill Beretta, and now we interviewed Gene. So,
Two Barretta Brothers. There you go.
Yep.
There you go, folks. If you want to check out more of what he's doing now, his website, geneberetta.com, is going to be in the description down below. So you're going to keep see what things he's doing as well. If you guys want to check out of upcoming appearance schedules that he'll be doing later in the year, you can check out from his website as well, and his social media as well as in the description down below, as well as with the Barretta Brothers podcast as well, if you guys want to check it out as well.
yes, but it's goodbye from Gene, and now it's goodbye from us as well. And what do we say, Jake?
Keep nostalgia alive. Take care, everyone. See you next time. See ya. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for tuning in to another wonderful Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show interview. Be sure to follow Jake and the crew on social media and stream the show wherever you find your favorite podcasts. And as always, remember to keep nostalgia alive. Bye-bye.